1 in 100 people have schizophrenia. That means statistically right now you almost certainly know someone living with it. A coworker, a classmate, a family member, maybe someone you see every single day. And there's a very good chance you have no idea. That's not an accident. That's a result of how deeply misunderstood this condition really is. So today let's actually talk about it. Quick truth before we go any further: schizophrenia is not about having a split personality. That's probably the biggest, most damaging myth in all of mental health, and it's kept millions of people from getting the help they need. Schizophrenia is a brain disorder where a person loses touch with reality. It affects over 24 million people worldwide. It's serious. It's real. And this is the part most people never hear: it is treatable. And that's not a feel-good line. We're going to prove it. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand schizophrenia better than most people ever will. Hey, welcome back. If you're new here, glad you found this. Here's something I want you to hold on to for this entire video. There's one thing about schizophrenia that surprises almost everyone who actually studies it seriously, including researchers and psychiatrists who've spent their whole careers on this. And it has nothing to do with the symptoms. We'll get there. Whether you're watching because someone you love is struggling, because you're trying to understand your own experience, or you just want to know the actual truth, this is for you. Let's get into it. I want you to meet someone. We'll call her Sarah. Sarah is 24 years old. Bright, funny, studying for her final college exams. Then one night, she starts hearing a voice. Just one, at first. It comments on what she's doing. You're going to fail. She thinks it's stress. She pushes through. A few weeks later, there are 2 voices. Then 3. They start arguing with each other. She becomes convinced her professors are conspiring against her. She stops going to class. She stops answering texts. Her roommate thinks she's just burned out. She's not burned out. Sarah has schizophrenia. And her story is far more common than most people realize. What is schizophrenia? So what's actually happening inside Sarah's brain? Schizophrenia is a serious, chronic mental disorder, chronic meaning long-term, that disrupts how a person thinks, feels, and perceives reality. The best way I've heard it described: imagine your brain is a communication network. Millions of signals firing every second, helping you process what's real. In schizophrenia, that network gets disrupted. Signals get crossed. The brain starts generating experiences, voices, visions, beliefs that feel completely real from the inside, even when they have no basis in the outside world. Scientists believe it comes from a combination of 3 things. Genetics: it runs in families, though having a relative with it doesn't guarantee you'll develop it. Brain chemistry, specifically a neurotransmitter called dopamine. We'll come back to that when we talk treatment, because it's important. Environment: extreme stress, childhood trauma, or even certain viral infections during pregnancy can increase risk. It's not weakness. It's not a character flaw. It's a medical condition the same way diabetes is a medical condition. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the answer to what are the types of schizophrenia has actually changed. For decades, doctors divided schizophrenia into 5 official subtypes. Then in 2013, those categories were completely removed from the diagnostic manual. Just gone. Why? Because the science showed that most people didn't fit neatly into one box. They overlapped. The categories weren't helping doctors treat people better. They were just labels that didn't reflect real life. But understanding why those categories existed still matters because they show you just how differently this condition can look from person to person. The old 5 were: paranoid, the most common. Strong delusions and hallucinations, usually voices. Thinking and emotions mostly intact. Someone with this might hold a job, hold a full conversation, seem completely fine on the outside and still be living inside a terrifying internal world every single moment. You'd never know. Disorganized, here the main problem is jumbled thinking and behavior. Sentences that don't connect. Emotional responses that don't match the moment. Day-to-day tasks become genuinely hard to complete. Catatonic extremes of movement. Either completely frozen, motionless, unresponsive, or the opposite, wildly agitated and restless. Rare, but striking when it occurs. Undifferentiated, the catch-all. Clearly schizophrenia, but symptoms spread across too many categories to fit neatly in one. Residual, a previous episode has faded. The major symptoms are quiet, but mild signs linger. Today, doctors use a broader framework called the schizophrenia spectrum, which acknowledges that this isn't one rigid condition. It's a whole range. Related conditions on that spectrum include schizoaffective disorder, delusional disorder, and brief psychotic disorder. Think of it like this: schizophrenia isn't a single room. It's a whole building and different people live on different floors. Now, symptoms. And I want to give you a framework that will make everything click into place. Doctors organize schizophrenia symptoms into 3 groups. Once you understand this, you'll understand the condition better than most people who've never studied it. Group 1, positive symptoms. Positive here doesn't mean good. It means things that are added to a person's experience. Things that shouldn't be there but are. Back to Sarah. The voices she was hearing? Those are hallucinations, perceiving something that isn't there. Hearing voices is the most common form, but people can also see things, smell things, or feel physical sensations that have no external source. And to the person experiencing it, these aren't fuzzy or dreamlike. They're as vivid and real as anything you're seeing right now. The belief that her professors were conspiring against her? That's a delusion, a fixed, false belief the person cannot be talked out of, no matter what evidence you put in front of them. Common types include: persecutory, I'm being followed. They're watching me. Grandiose, I have a special mission. I was chosen. Referential, that song on the radio is sending me a message personally. There's also disorganized thinking, where thoughts fragment mid-sentence, jumping between ideas with no clear thread. And disorganized behavior, acting in ways that seem unpredictable or bizarre to the people around them. Group 2, negative symptoms. These are the opposite things that get taken away from a person's normal functioning. Flat affect and elogia, very little facial expression, very little speech. The person becomes quiet in a way that feels like absence. Avolition, a complete loss of motivation. Not laziness, the brain's actual ability to initiate action is genuinely impaired. Getting out of bed isn't a choice. It's a wall. Anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. Things that used to bring joy feel completely empty. Food, music, relationships flat. Social withdrawal, pulling away from everyone, including the people who love them most. These symptoms are often harder to treat than the positive ones, and they have a bigger impact on daily life. They also look a lot like depression, which is one reason correct diagnosis matters so much. Group 3, cognitive symptoms. These affect the brain's processing power directly. Difficulty concentrating. Poor working memory. Information slips away almost immediately after it arrives. Trouble making decisions or following cause and effect. For Sarah, this is what made exams feel impossible even before the voices got loud. Her brain was already struggling to hold on to information. Not everyone with schizophrenia experiences all of this. Some people live mostly with positive symptoms. Some struggle more with negative ones. That's exactly why it's called a spectrum and why every person's experience is genuinely unique. Who gets schizophrenia and when? So how does someone end up here? How does a 24-year-old like Sarah go from studying for finals to hearing 3 voices? It can happen to anyone, any background, any culture, any income level. But there are patterns worth knowing. Symptoms typically first appear in late teens to early 30s. Men tend to show symptoms a bit earlier. Women, a bit later. It's rare in children, but it does happen. Risk factors include family history, growing up in extreme poverty, experiencing serious trauma, and this one tends to generate conversation-heavy cannabis use during adolescence. Research has shown a real link between teenage cannabis use and triggering schizophrenia in people who are already genetically vulnerable. That's not a moral judgment. It's just something worth knowing. But here's what matters most: having risk factors doesn't mean you will develop it. It's always a combination of biology and environment, and that combination is different for every person. All right. Treatment. And I want to say this directly: schizophrenia is treatable. People recover. People build careers, raise families, maintain relationships, live full and meaningful lives. That is real and it is documented. Treatment works best when it combines 3 things. 1. Medication. Antipsychotics. These are the foundation. Remember the dopamine we talked about earlier? Antipsychotic medications work by regulating those dopamine levels in the brain. There are 2 generations. First generation: older medications like haloperidol. Effective, but can cause side effects like muscle stiffness and tremors. Second generation: newer, generally better tolerated. Risperidone, olanzapine, quetiapine, and clozapine, considered the gold standard for cases where other medications haven't worked. Finding the right medication takes time. It often takes adjustments. And the hardest challenge? Many people stop taking their medication when they start feeling better, not understanding that the medication is why they're feeling better. Stopping almost always leads to relapse. Consistency is not optional. 2. Therapy, especially CBT. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps people identify distorted thought patterns and develop strategies for responding to hallucinations and delusions. It doesn't make symptoms disappear, but it fundamentally changes the relationship a person has with those symptoms. That's a meaningful, life-changing difference. Family therapy, social skills training, and cognitive remediation programs are also part of the toolkit. 3. Psychosocial support. This is everything around the medication and therapy, the structures that allow someone to actually live their life. Supported employment. Stable housing. Case management. Peer support groups, being with people who truly understand what this feels like from the inside. Early intervention programs like Navigate and RAISE have shown that catching and treating schizophrenia early dramatically improves long-term outcomes. The earlier treatment starts, the better. Now the question families are always afraid to ask: what if they won't get help? This is the hardest part. And I'm not going to skip it. Schizophrenia can make a person genuinely unable to recognize that they're unwell. There's a symptom called anosognosia. It affects roughly half of all people with schizophrenia. It is not denial. It is not stubbornness. The brain literally cannot register that something is wrong. If you are a family member who has spent years watching someone you love refuse help convince they're fine, and you felt frustrated and helpless and heartbroken wondering why they won't just listen, you weren't dealing with a choice. You were dealing with a symptom. If someone you love is refusing treatment, the most important things are: stay connected, work with a mental health professional on an engagement strategy, and in crisis situations, know your local mental health crisis resources. It's not a punishment. It's a safety net. You are not powerless. But you also cannot force recovery. You can only create the conditions where it becomes possible. Remember Sarah? She did get help. Not right away. It took a crisis, a hospitalization, and a long road of finding the right medication. But she got there. Today she volunteers at a mental health advocacy organization. She talks openly about her diagnosis. And when people ask her what made the difference, the thing that actually saved her, she doesn't say the medication first. She doesn't say the therapy. She says it was one person who refused to stop showing up. That's the thing about schizophrenia, and honestly, about most of mental health. The science matters enormously. The treatment matters. But underneath all of it, what people need most is to not be alone in it. If you are living with schizophrenia, you are not broken. You are navigating something most people couldn't handle for a single day, and you are doing it every day. That is not weakness. That is extraordinary. If you love someone with schizophrenia, your presence is not nothing. It might be everything. Now, I promised you something at the beginning. Something that surprises almost everyone when they actually study this. Including researchers. Including psychiatrists who have spent their entire careers on this. Here it is. A significant number of people with schizophrenia with the right treatment, the right support, and enough time reach a point where they no longer meet the diagnostic criteria. Not managed. Not maintained on medication just to function. Gone. Full remission. Real recovery. For more people than we ever thought possible. That almost never makes the news. It doesn't fit the story we've been told about schizophrenia. But it is documented. It is real. And that, more than anything else I've said today, is what I want you to walk away with. Hold on to that. If this video shifted how you see schizophrenia even a little, hit that like. It helps more people find this, and more people deserve access to this kind of information. Subscribe if you want more. We do this every week, breaking down mental health topics in a way that's actually human. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a family member, someone struggling, share this video. You might not know how to explain schizophrenia yourself. But now this video can do it for you. Drop a comment below. What's the one thing from today that genuinely surprised you? I read every one. Take care of yourselves. See you next time.